Okay, everyone. I figured I would just make a short video today. This is the first time that I've made a video with just me. I've done a couple of interviews over the past 7 or 8 months in which individuals have asked me to come on their shows or their podcasts, and they've interviewed me. And then even more recently, I've conducted some interviews in which I've interviewed other people. But what I have not done, and I've been meaning to do for a while, is just do an interview, just myself alone, that I can kind of guide however I want, say whatever I want, and then upload. So what I want to do today is just make a very short video, just kind of introduce myself and just let everyone know that I'm going to start making more of these. So this is just an introductory video, not just to myself personally, but just also by way of communicating to everyone that I'm going to make more videos about a variety of topics, just whatever I feel like talking about. And I'm going to upload them. Where am I going to upload them? I don't know. I mean, it'll be a variety of platforms. I don't exactly know, and it will probably change with time. But I am going to upload them on a couple of different places. So I'll set up channels here and there, and just start putting out some videos. Many of you who are familiar with me at all probably know that I do some writing, and what I write can be found at Substack. So to find my Substack, it's just my name. So bradmiller10.substack.com. My Substack is entitled Ideas and Actions. But if you go there, you can find a lot of stuff that I've written over the last couple of months. And I'm going to continue to do that. But just in addition to what I write, I also want to create some videos. Some people just are not big readers and they're only going to listen to a video. And then others, I mean, it just depends. What do I want to talk about? Maybe some things lend themselves to more easily be communicated verbally than via writing, and that's okay too. And sometimes it's also easier just to communicate your own ideas in just a just a spoken form, right? So for those who might not be super familiar with who I am, let me just take a couple of minutes and introduce myself. So again, my name is Brad Miller, and I live in Tennessee. I'm from North Carolina originally. I'm wearing a North Carolina hat. That's a North Carolina state flag right there. If you're from North Carolina, don't worry, I'm not going to ask you what are the two dates on the state flag, because I realize you probably don't know. But if you had read my Substack article in which I talk about it, you probably would know. Anyway, so I'm from North Carolina, proud North Carolinian. I wear my hat because I am a proud North Carolinian, but also just in general, I think that the states need to get their act together. I don't feel like the federal government's going to fix itself. So, and plenty of the state governments are super corrupt, don't get me wrong. But I mean, I'm at the point where I think the federal government is almost completely lost. I'm not going to say that it is completely lost, but I feel completely confident saying it's almost completely lost. And I do feel like the states at some point have to interpose themselves between the federal government and the people. So yeah, so I proudly wear my hat that I'm a proud North Carolinian, and just kind of generally that I want the states to do more. And that doesn't mean that I've completely written off the federal government, but it does mean that I do not harbor illusions as to how I think we're going to be able to fix our government. Why do I even say that? I mean, I'm already starting to derail myself from what I wanted to talk about today, but by way of introduction, I spent a long time in the military. I was an officer in the Army for 19 years. So, I feel completely within my rights, first of all, as a citizen, and second of all, as a former military officer, and in heavily criticizing the federal government. I have no qualms about doing that whatsoever. So I grew up in North Carolina. I went to West Point, which is the United States Military Academy. I graduated in 2003. I served in the Army until the fall of 2022. So a little over 19 years, 3 months, 15 days to be exact. And then I resigned. So why did I resign? Well, I had previously been relieved of my command. So I was a battalion commander in the Army in the 101st Airborne Division. Command would normally be a 2-year assignment. I was only in my command position for about 4.5 months. And then I was relieved. This happened from the summer through the fall of 2021. And it had to do because of the COVID-19 vaccine mandate, which I refused to go along with. So long story short, I've explained this in other interviews in far greater detail. I was never going to take the shot. There was never a question in my mind. I never believed the narrative about what was going on with COVID and what COVID was or was not. I'm not here to tell you now what COVID, was or was not. I don't pretend to know exactly. There are lots of different theories. I think some of them have a greater likelihood of being true than others. But I think what the United States government told us about COVID was false from the very beginning. So anyway, I just never believed what we were being told. I always thought there was something extremely sinister behind it. I was never going to take the shots because I always felt like the shots were one of the objectives for which COVID, whatever COVID is or is not, for which it had been, created, whether we're talking about, something that makes people sick or whether we're just talking about kind of the narrative around that. In either case, I thought all of that was created to achieve certain outcomes. I believe one of those outcomes was the shots. I mean, another outcome was just, lockdowns and just greater control over the people. But in any case, I just wasn't going to go along with it. And so I just realized that, I don't think I could stay in the military any longer. I think I'm just going to have to, it's not just about the shot. It's not just about COVID. It's bigger than that. And I don't think I can put on the uniform anymore. And it's not because I'm not a proud American. Everything I said about the federal government, you got to understand, I'm a very proud American. I'm very proud to be a United States citizen, very proud to have been born in the United States, very proud to have, been a part of this country's history and have it be part of my own personal history, very proud to have gone to West Point. I was not Mr. Supermodel cadet. And I mean super, model cadet, as in that I was not a super or a model cadet. I definitely was not a supermodel cadet, in case anyone's misinterpreting what I meant by that. But in fact, I was actually a pretty poor cadet in the beginning of my time at West Point. And then I was a better cadet by the time I graduated. But regardless of that, I'm very proud to be a West Point graduate, very proud to be a veteran, very proud to be a former military officer. Every unit that I served in, proud to have been a part of those units. But my concern is not with the military itself per se, as an institution. Institutions are run by people. I have a real problem with the government who runs the government. And it's not because I have a problem with governance or institutions that govern. It's that I have problems with those who have completely infiltrated our systems over a long period of time and now want to control people. And I'm not going to go along with that. I can't. I'm a believer. I'm a Christian. I don't pretend to be, better than anybody else per se. That's not my point in saying that, but it is saying that, I have a worldview that I follow in which I believe that we're all part of something that's bigger than ourselves. We're all part of a family. We should do things that align ourselves with God, that there are truths out there that are not relative, and that we should live in accordance with those truths. And I don't shy away from that. In our fallen world, there's a lot of evil out there too, and I think it's our responsibility to defend ourselves from that and protect others. Whether that means our very lives and our own, sovereignty as individuals, or whether it just means our systems. And I think the United States has a lot of problems going on right now, and these are not new. And I mean, I almost wish that as Americans, we could go back and perform what I've called an audit, just for lack of a better term, in which we just meticulously review our own history and review our legal and political systems and the philosophical or even theological framework within which those systems have been crafted, and figure out, how did we get to where we are? Because we're clearly not where we should be. So is this all by design, or have we run in a direction counter to our design? Which is it? I'm actually kind of surprised I haven't been ambushed yet. So I do have a dog. His name is Kairos. He's not quite a year and a half old. He's a Rhodesian Ridgeback. And so if you see, he's downstairs. He was napping, but I'm actually surprised that he has let me come up here without coming up and ambushing me. So if you see behind me at some point, a red dog loping towards me and then trying to wrestle with me, yeah, that could happen at any moment. But yeah, his name's Kairos. He's a lot of fun. Yeah, I mean, I wish we could do like a review, like a meticulous review of our systems, seen through the lens of history, and then figure out, where did we go wrong? Were some of these problems baked into the cake, or have we turned against the way in which the system was constructed, right? So is it because of our origin, or is it in spite of our origin? When I say our origin, I mean our political and cultural origins. I mean, I do mean like the founding of the nation, with the War for Independence and the Constitution, et cetera. But then even some of the political and cultural foundations that existed before then. I mean, the United States as a nation, I mean, it didn't just pop out of nowhere in 1776. I mean, there's a lot of political and cultural inertia that had been moving forward for a long time, that propelled us toward and through 1776. And so I think when you're doing any sort of review, were you to do that, you got to take that into consideration too. When you start your review, you don't start with 1776. First of all, that's not even the beginning of the War for Independence, which had already been going on for a year prior to the Declaration of Independence. But again, it didn't happen in a vacuum. So there's a lot of history, more than a century's worth of history, century and a half, right? I guess you could really go back further than that. I mean, you could really look at some of our political leanings that we inherited, from our European origins. Anyway, but I'm passionate about that stuff. I'm not telling you I'm an expert, but I'm passionate about it. I do read a lot about it. I write some about it. These things are constantly on my mind. I mean, constantly. I'm always just thinking about, hey, where are we going as a people? Where am I going as a person? And am I moving in a positive direction or not? And if not, then how do I correct that? And how do we as a people correct that? So what else? What else might you be curious about? I'm not married, so I live alone with with Kairos. I said I'm in Tennessee. Grew up in North Carolina. I would like to move back to North Carolina at some point. I don't know when that's going to happen, but I would like to. The whole time I was in the military, I always considered North Carolina to be home. So I never lived anywhere that I truly considered to be home. Now, having said that, I was stationed in northern New York twice, and I even bought a home there that I owned for a long time. So I'm always going to have some connection to New York. Plus, I went to school in New York State, right? So, I mean, I've lived in New York for about 10 years. In fact, aside from North Carolina, New York would be the state in which I've spent the most time. I also spent a little over 5 years in Georgia and actually really enjoyed Georgia. So, not too far away from North Carolina, also a southern state. So I enjoyed Georgia. I don't know that I don't know that I necessarily ever felt like it was home, but I probably felt the most comfortable there of all the places that I did live, or where I enjoyed the most. I do like Tennessee though. I've only been here a couple of years, but I have not moved yet since leaving the Army. This is where I finished out of the Army. Haven't moved, still live here. Let's see. So I mentioned that I mentioned that how we as Americans should go back and kind of look at our beginnings. When I say that almost as a thought experiment. I'm under no illusion that some grand convention is going to be held. There are people who talk about constitutional conventions. I think in the abstract, that's a good idea. However, people who are wary of that, I completely understand their concerns. Their concerns is that you have a runaway convention, and that you go into the convention with a constitution that nobody follows, but at least the Constitution exists. You come out of the Constitution, and you come out of the convention and maybe the Constitution no longer exists. I think that's a completely valid concern, but there's something to be said for right now. Nobody cares about the Constitution in the federal government. Nobody cares about it. But they all pretend to care about it. So at least if you go into a convention, maybe on the other end, maybe people would have to be more honest about not really caring about the Constitution. I don't know. But in any case, when I talk about like this review or this audit of our systems viewed through, history and our political, philosophical underpinnings, et cetera, I'm more discussing that as a thought experiment, not in any way because I think that is actually going to occur. I kind of think it should occur. I think that it's without something of that magnitude occurring, I think that we're just going to continue on a path to ruin. I mean, I hate to be that. I hate to say it in those terms, but I think we're on a path to ruin, and maybe we can still reverse that. But if things continue to trend in the way that they're trending, our decline will continue and perhaps even accelerate. I don't trust the leaders who are currently in charge of the military. That's another reason why I resigned. Would I go back? No. I mean, I get asked this question sometimes, and I typically will say something like, probably not. But as more time has passed, I think the answer is getting closer and closer to just a flat out definitive no. The only thing that would allow me to in any way consider returning to the military would be if there were just sweeping changes with our military leadership, and therefore the priorities that our military is aligned against. Another thing that might make me reconsider is if I needed to put the uniform back on because if we were invaded by, I don't know, pick your adversary, China, Russia, maybe something like that. But even to defend, I don't know that I would need to put the uniform on to defend, right? Also, I have to immediately caveat even some eventuality like that. I have to immediately caveat by saying China is an enemy. I would never say they're not. You can say the same thing about Russia, a couple of other state actors out there as well. But our biggest enemy is not China or not Russia. It's those who have infiltrated our own governments over a very, very long period of time, and then those who control those individuals. And, I do believe that there are secret networks of people. I don't know who they are. I don't know where they are, but I do believe that there are secret networks of people that are very evil, answer to evil, and that they have designs to, control as many people as they can and control as much of the world's assets and resources as they can. And to a large degree, I mean, I think they've been successful. Those are our enemies. I don't know who they are. I mean, I can't give you names. I don't know. And I don't care if that sounds conspiratorial or whatever. I think what has happened in the last couple of years demonstrates that, vividly. So anyway, so what do I do now? I've been out of the Army for not quite a year, about 11 months. And if I had it to do all over again, I would resign in much the same fashion that I did. I might have a couple of micro regrets. And what I mean by that is like, yeah, maybe I would have said this differently, done this differently. Sure. Maybe even have been more bold in my exit, but I would still exit. I would still resign. Like that's not, I don't regret that at all. I mean, I knew what I was giving up when I resigned. I knew that I was giving up a pension. Sure. Okay. It's just money, and money. If I were to have tried to stay, in my mind, I would have felt like I was doing it only for the money. And, I would have a hard time putting on the uniform each day, right? Have a hard time looking at myself in the mirror. So I've said it before in interviews that, sure, I lost my battalion command. I lost the remainder of whatever would have been my career, and I lost my retirement. But, I resigned and left the Army with my oath to the Constitution and my integrity intact. And in my mind, that means I came out a winner, right? But it's certainly been, I'm not going to tell you it's been easy. I'm not going to tell you that my life is without stress. Obviously, financially it was a terrible decision. But there are things more important than money. So when I got out of the Army, and it was kind of abrupt, right? I mean, you don't get to 18 and a half, 19 years in the Army and then think, oh, my retirement's not going to be there. On the day that I left the Army, my last day in the Army, like I said earlier, it was 19 years, 3.5 months, right? So 8.5 months from qualifying for my retirement pension. So that's in your head. It's in your head that you're going to have this retirement pension. I mean, you kind of start making financial decisions as if it's that pension's going to be there. And then all of a sudden it's not, right? So it is what it is. But I won't lie, it has been a stressor. Continues to be a stressor. When I got out of the Army, I did not want to go take a defense, some sort of defense contract position, because why would I leave, working for the federal government to go work for the federal government in some other capacity? Didn't want to do that. I also did not want to go work for just some soulless corporation. I have no doubt I could have gotten some good jobs, but I did not want to go do that. Go work for some soulless corporation in which, again, I'm working, making good money, maybe even a good job, but just, I just don't think we have time for that. I think for me, I think that our country is on the precipice, and I just don't care about, I'm not saying money is unimportant, but I just think there are better things I can do with my time than, just go get some job that just doesn't have a whole lot of value for me outside of just the paycheck. So ideally, I would like to earn money engaged in the cause. So I've tried to find ways to do that. Still looking to do that. That's one of the reasons why I write. It's one of the reasons why I still do a lot of interviews, is to try and wake people up, and people are hard to wake up. I'm pretty critical of just Americans, my countrymen. I am a proud American, but I'm pretty critical of just other people in general. But it's not because I don't care about them. I'm critical because I do care about people. But I just wish people were, more aware of what's going on, and aware that freedom isn't free. That's a saying that's been around a long time. I heard it throughout my military career, but I understand it in a slightly different way. It's not the United States military that's going to keep us free. And in fact, right now, the United States military is contributing to the enslavement of the population. And if you think the population's not enslaved, then I would say you're not awake. We had people who wore masks that served no beneficial purpose. I still see people wearing masks. Right now, in August of 2023, occasionally there are people wearing masks. There are people in their cars alone, still driving around by themselves, nobody else in the vehicle with a mask. There are people still talking about COVID. There are people still taking PCR tests. There are people that have taken 4 shots. There are countless numbers of people who have died because of the shots. Of course, I believe that. I think the evidence bears that out. When there's any one case of injury that occurs, I realize that it's hard to say this person took a shot and is injured. It's hard to draw that causal link. But what in any one case, I got it. But what I think is easier is when you just look at just the sheer numbers and you're like, well, we've got cases of myocarditis or heart attacks or whatever, on the rise over the last 2.5, 3 years. What's changed? What's the variable that has changed? And you got to ask yourself that. So I do think these shots are killing people, and I think they've injured a lot more people. And I have a high school friend who was, I would say, murdered in the hospital because he was put on remdesivir. He was on a vent with remdesivir, and he died. I'm sure his death is attributed somewhere in a database as being a COVID death. But I would tell you that's a remdesivir homicide. It's a homicide by remdesivir. Anyway, my point is people are enslaved. They listen to sheer bullshit coming out of the TV for years and just believed whatever they were told. And people lost their jobs over this. People went and got shots. There were people who were scared and went to go get shots because they couldn't risk losing their job, and they knew they couldn't trust the shots, and they were stuck in a situation where they either had to go get a shot that they knew was harmful and they knew would not provide any benefit whatsoever, or lose their job, and they knowingly went and took that shot. Whether that's right or wrong, they were in a situation they had to do what they had to do, right? And they knew what they were medically risking when they did it, because they had to provide for their family. And do I agree with that decision? I made a different decision, but I will say I appreciate the gravity of the situation that those people were in when they had to make those types of decisions. So my point is that we have seen that in this country and across the world, many people are they are enslaved to the information that they have received, which is typically and deliberately skewed. Disinformation and misinformation. I think more disinformation than misinformation, though there's plenty of misinformation out there too. It's just the nature of the complex information environment in which we live. But I think a lot of it is deliberate in its attempt to mislead the public. I like history a lot. I like philosophy. I do like religion. I've always kind of, liked religion, the study of religion, the intersection between theology and philosophy with with history or with geopolitics. All that stuff interests me. I read a lot about it. So in my study, I do have a lot of bookcases. You can see some of them behind me. So I read a lot. There's a lot of stuff that interests me. Have I read every book in here? Yep. Every single book in here I have read from cover to cover. That's not true. That is not true. Many of the books in here I have read. Many of the books in here I have not read. and there are a lot of books in here, kind of, somewhere in between where I've read, parts of them. But I do like to read. So there are plenty of books up here on my bookshelf that, they're in the queue. I aim to get to them when I can. I do wish people would read more. I wrote a Substack about that just the other day. I unfortunately, I feel that reading books has become a lost art. And there's a reason for that. You don't even have to burn the books if nobody reads them, right? So anyway, I know I was kind of all over the place today. I know myself, so that's not surprising that I would just kind of naturally allow the flow of the conversation to just go wherever it would go. I say conversation as if it was a two-way dialogue, but even just me here, conversing alone, I knew that I would just go wherever. So that's okay. Hopefully it gave you a picture into a little bit about me. Where do I plan to go from here? I plan to stay engaged in the fight. I want to continue writing, doing some other things. I'm passionate about education. And largely that means self-education and helping others, learning from others. So anyway, hopefully somebody finds this video interesting, even if for no other reason than just to learn maybe just a little bit more about me and then what I plan to do. And I will try to be diligent in making more of these videos and putting information out there that's, hopefully interesting. I mean, there's no point in putting out videos if they're not going to be interesting, right? So, okay, I think that's it for now. And I will try to figure out where exactly I'm going to upload these and then set up some channels. And then I'll start to communicate. I'll start to put out there on my social media where these videos can be found. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in. And I hope to see all of you soon.